Hi everyone, welcome back to the Stitches in STEM YouTube channel. My name is Michaela and this is podcast episode number 2. Today I have one finished object to show you, one whip update and one new cast on. When I watched my first episode back, I realised I forgot to give any form of introduction besides my name, so I want to correct that. My name is Michaela. I was born and raised in Dublin, Ireland, and I still live here. I've been knitting for 1.5 years and I was crocheting for 2 years before that. I work full time as a scientist and I somehow managed to make time for all of my hobbies, which obviously include knitting, but also playing video games, pole fitness, which you'll know if you follow me on Instagram, and most importantly, I like to make time for my dog, Reggie. So with that out of the way, let's get into the knitting. So as I said, I have one finished object and that is a very basic pair of vanilla socks. I showed these in my last podcast and I was still working on the leg. The yarn for the cuff and the toe is Kremka Soul Wool Alpaca Edelweiss or Edelweiss Alpaca in the colour turquoise, and the main colour is Hedgehog Fibres, a potluck skein. It's their sock yarn, which is a 90% merino, 10% nylon, and I mentioned this in the last podcast, but just in case you missed it, their potluck skeins are like they're one of a kind, or I think they're developmental skeins, and they don't usually list all of them online. You can sometimes get them in bundles on their website, but the individual ones are a little bit harder to get. But I got this from their studio, which is in Cork here in Ireland. I worked these cuff down and cast on 64 stitches. I worked 20 rounds of 2x2 rib for the cuff and I worked 70 rounds for the leg. I did a standard slip stitch, heel, flap and gusset. And then I actually decreased to 60 stitches for the foot, and I also worked an anatomical toe, but I can't show you right now because they're still wet, they're still on the blockers, so I don't want to take them off. But basically the outside of the toes both decrease at a faster rate than the inside because that's more realistic to the way your foot is shaped. So I did this by only decreasing on the outside of the sock for the first 10 rows, and I just kept trying on the sock and figured out when to start decreasing on the inside. I also made sure that the whole toe only lasted for 20 rounds, which is what I usually work my toes over, and then at the end I had 13 stitches left, so I just grafted them together. In a regular wedge toe I usually have 8 stitches left to graft, but I find that this is very narrow at the toes, so the 13 stitches, at first when I did the maths and realised it was going to be 13 stitches, I thought it would be too wide, but actually it fits really well. So I have the exact stitch and row counts for what I did written out in my Ravelry project page, which I will link in the description box below. So as I said, I worked the leg for 70 rounds. I usually do 60 rounds, but I was really enjoying just the mindless knitting, so I decided to make them a bit longer, and I have to say I will probably just go back to my standard 60 round leg from now on. They're just a little bit too long. I still wear them just as much as I wear my other socks, but I just prefer the look of 60 rounds, so I'll probably just stick to that in the future. So that is my only finished object for this episode, and now we will move on to whips. I have one whip update for today, and that is my tee number 1 by My Favourite Things Knitwear. This is a boxy tee with a relaxed fit. It features saddle shoulder construction and these folded edges on the neckline and the sleeve hem and the bottom hem. The pattern calls for wild and soft held together with cashmere lace, which are both from Capard yarn. This is a light fingering weight held together with a lace weight yarn. I'm using Suec Whisper lace held together with Isire Alpaca 1, which are both lace weight yarns. The Whisper lace is a wool silk blend, which is similar to Wild and Soft, while the Alpaca one is just 100% alpaca. I was worried about the fabric being a bit too loose as I'm using 2 lace weight yarns, but I'm actually really happy with it. I think if it was any heavier it would be too warm for the kind of t-shirt that I'm looking for with this project. So I'm match gauge on 3.5mm needles, which is what the pattern calls for. So in my last episode I had just joined the front, right and left panels, so since then I worked the rest of the front panel and then I joined it to the back, and I've just been working in the round ever since. I worked the body until I ran out of the first ball of yarn, and then I went back and picked up the neckline because I want to check the fit before I finish the body. I want to check the length, and I think the neckline, when the neckline is finished, it just adds a lot more structure and you get a more accurate idea of how the top actually fits. But I do think I'm getting close to finishing the body. So the pattern, as the pattern is written, the t-shirt will be 54 centimeters from the back neck to the bottom hem, which I think is a little bit long for me. So I measured some t-shirts that I own that I'm happy with, and I think I'm going to make mine about 50 centimeters total, which includes a 2 centimeter folded hem. So I'll have to knit the body until 48 centimeters. but I also have to take into account the growth of the fabric when it's blocked. So I measured my swatch before and after blocking. Before blocking, my gauge was 38 rows in 10 centimeters, and after blocking it was 34 rows in 10 centimeters. So that is a 12% increase, which means that I need to assume that that length of 48 centimeters is taking into account a 12% increase. So I divided 48 by 1.12 to figure out how long I actually need to knit the body to, and that came out to about 42 centimeters. So basically, if I knit this to 42 centimeters, when I block it, it should grow to 48, and then I'll have the 2 centimeters of the hem at the bottom as well. Hopefully that will work. I don't know. It works in my head, and currently it measures 38 centimeters, so I only have a few more centimeters to do with the body. I did knit the neckline, but I just haven't sewed it down yet, so I'll probably do that very soon, because I think it will look really nice. I think it will really bring the whole thing together, because at the moment it just looks like a load of scraps with these ends hanging out. It's very unsightly right now, I'm sorry. But I'm convinced once the neckline is done, I'm going to weave in a lot of these ends as well, so I can be sure that I'm happy with the fit around the neckline and the chest area. So I want to talk about the fabric. This is a very new to me combination of yarns. I've never worked with a wool silk blend, and I very rarely work with alpaca. It's a little bit hard on my fingers, especially when maintaining the tension. It just cuts into my fingers a bit, but it's not intolerable. I do really like how it's working up. It's got a really nice drape even without blocking, but the actual feel of the fabric is not the nicest. It feels quite thick and like rubbery, which sounds weird, but that's all I can think of to describe it. So the unblocked fabric to me does not feel like it's suitable for a spring or summer knit, but the block swatch feels completely different. It's like night and day. It just feels, it's loosened up so much. It's very drapey and airy, and it actually makes me excited to finish this. I feel like this is just going to be such a lovely fabric to wear. As for the pattern, I know I talked a lot in the last episode about all of the yarn breaks and the weaving in ends, but if you missed that, just to recap, I talked about the initial stages of making this tee, so the panels and picking up the stitches around the edges of the panels and joining the front and back left and right sections, and I included a very crudely drawn PowerPoint presentation to illustrate my point. So if you're making this tee and you want to avoid at least 4 yarn breaks, I recommend going back and watching that. I've included timestamps so you can just skip to the relevant part. So after joining the front and back, it's just stockinette in the round. I did knit the neckline, but I haven't sewn it down yet, so you actually pick up and knit the neckline from the wrong side so that you fold it down to the outside, and that means that you get this really nice raised edge where the seam is. So yeah, that's all I have to say for today. Hopefully next time it'll be close to finished. So I have 1 new cast on since my last episode. I was hoping to have 2, but I just ran out of time, and I talked a bit about this in my first podcast episode just as part of my knitting plans, and I also talked about it in my stash busting spring plan, because this yarn is has been in my stash for a long time and I'm using it as part of the stash busting spring. So this is Hobby Diablo Multi, and it is 40% acrylic, 30% mohair and 30% polyamide. It's a super bulky weight yarn, and the pattern actually calls for an Aran weight yarn, but I knit up a swatch on 6mm needles and I matched the gauge of the pattern, and I like the fabric. It doesn't feel too dense, so I was happy to go ahead with that. It's a raglan v-neck with this lace detail around the shoulder and the bottom hem, but I'm not going to do the lace. I'm just doing the plain stockinette. So I'm still working the raglan yoke, but it should be finished very soon. I actually haven't made any progress since my spring stash busting video, so this will look very familiar if you watch that video. I only have about 6 rounds left to work of the raglan before I can join in the round, and I've used almost 1 full ball of yarn. It is working up quickly, but I haven't touched it in a few days, so not as fast as I might have expected, but that's entirely on me because I just haven't worked on it. The yarn is nice. It's not scratchy or anything. It does have that slightly synthetic feel to it, but it's not scratchy or anything, and I think I'll be comfortable wearing this next to skin. I do run warm, so I tend to avoid synthetic fabrics, but since this is kind of a relaxed fit with a more open chest area, a more open gauge or a more open fabric, I think it'll be okay. And the fabric definitely isn't as dense as I thought it would be, considering it's on 6mm needles and it's a super bulky weight yarn. It's actually really nice. So I did mention that I haven't been excited to start this project, but now that I have started it, I have changed my mind and I actually am enjoying working on it, even though it doesn't look like it from the limited progress I've made. I am enjoying working on it and I'm looking forward to finishing it. The next thing I want to talk about is not a whip. It is a plan that I've already talked about in the last episode, but I was really hoping to have it cast on for this episode, but I'm very likely going to cast it on tonight, so I won't talk about it too much. I just wanted to mention it because I'm very likely going to cast it on tonight, or straight after I finish filming, and it is the Summer Camp Socks by Jill Zielinski, and I'm going to use these two yarns. This one is a Pigment and Ply sock yarn, so it's 75% superwash merino and 25% nylon. And the colour is Tabby Cleave, which is a variegated yarn with lots of kind of olive greens. There's purple tones in there, oranges, really earthy tones. And for the contrast colour, I'm going to use Filcolana Arwetta in the colour Marzipan. I also mentioned in the last episode that I didn't like working with this before. One of the reasons was because that last ball I had wasn't a centre pull, whereas this one had this nice centre pull tail coming out of it. So I think that will make it a lot easier, because the last ball I worked with it, I couldn't find a tail on the inside, so I worked with it from the outside and it was a mess. It was a complete mess. So I think this will work out a bit better. We'll see. So that is all of my projects for now. It was a relatively short project segment. I don't have any immediate plans because I've just cast on the Evermore Sweater and I'm also going to cast on the Summer Camp Socks today, I think. I'm also going away for 3 weeks, so between my current whips I think I'm going to have enough to keep me occupied, and I probably won't cast on anything until I get back. So I'm not going to do a regular acquisition section. Sometimes I buy yarn and it's just kind of boring. It might be like a contrast colour for a sock, so I don't want to feel obliged to share every single time I get something, but obviously there are yarns that I am excited about that I buy, or stitch markers or something, so I figure I will show things that I'm excited about. I also thought it would be fun to talk about things that I've seen on social media that I have thoughts on, whether good or bad. That might be controversial, but we'll see. You know, things that have caught my eye, like yarns or patterns, or just a general maybe casual chat kind of about things in the knitting world. So that's what I'm going to do now. So the first thing I want to show is these nice stitch markers that I got. These are from Hello Kim, and a friend of mine actually gave me these as a gift only yesterday, so that was great timing because it means I'm able to show them here. These ones are obviously themed around Ireland. We've got the rainbow, the sheep, and of course the shamrock. I have some other stitch markers from Hello Kim. They're really nice and I'm just really happy to add these to my collection. Other things that have caught my eye are a couple of yarn pre-orders. First from Pigment and Ply. Jessica, who is the dyer, has just released a pre-order of I think 20 colourways or so, and most of which are from her advent from 2023. I love Pigment and Ply yarn. I've already mentioned it a few times in my videos, so I really wanted to get something, but I'm also trying to be sensible with my yarn purchases, so I ended up just getting one sock set, and I also got a variegated yarn that I'm going to use for the colourwork section of an Alpine Bloom tee. I haven't picked a main colour yet, but I want the t-shirt to be light and kind of spring appropriate, so I'm thinking a light kind of marzipan colour, or a very light, just like a natural or off-white kind of colour. Another yarn pre-order which I like the look of is from Ballyhora Fibres, which I've also mentioned on this channel before. I used Ballyhora Fibres for my Weekender crew neck, and she is releasing a collection called Nature's Palette, which is just a collection of 20 tonal yarns, and as of today she still has a couple more colours to reveal. I'm really loving greens and blues at the moment. Like, I like this colour called Ivy, which is just this dark blue toned green. I would love to use this for the stripes in a jumper, maybe with kind of a cream or a marzipan colour, so I might pick that up when the yarn is released. In terms of patterns, there is one that I really like right now, and it is the Carla Cardigan by Anne Bensel. This is an all over geometric colourwork pattern, which is actually worked through mosaic knitting, so you only work one colour per row instead of feral or stranded, where you work 2 or more colours per row. I've never made a cardigan. I also don't own any kind of commercially bought cardigans. I probably would wear them if I had them, but I just don't really own cardigans, so yeah, this might be the cardigan to change that. I just wanted to touch on the fact that I mentioned I'm going away. As of filming, I'm actually leaving tomorrow, so I'm in a bit of a rush to get this video edited and uploaded before I go, because I won't be taking my camera or my laptop with me. I'm going to be travelling around parts of Europe on trains, so it would just be, I think it would be too much to carry around with me, a laptop and a camera. So yeah, I'm going to leave them at home, and that also means that it's very unlikely that I will upload anything over the next 3 weeks. But if you are interested in keeping up with me, I am much more active on Instagram. I always upload updates on my knits and my whips, my finished objects, and I'll probably share a few photos from my travels as well. So feel free to join me over there if you'd like. Otherwise, that's all for today. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more, you can consider subscribing. I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!